It's 7 o'clock, and we are reorganizing. Therefore, the meeting will be called to order by me, Bob Tebow, Superintendent of Wyndham Central. Hereby call this meeting of the West River School Educational District to order. We have first order of business is to elect a chair. So I will take nominations for chair.
Nominate Al Claussen.
Al Claussen.
Nominate Drew Hazelton.
Drew Hazelton.
I was going to nominate Drew.
Drew Hazelton, Al Claussen. We have any other nominations? Both gentlemen accept those nominations, I assume? Yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's see. I have not done one of these, but it's been a contested race. So my guess is, and if someone correct me if I'm wrong, is that we just vote one or the other. We're not voting them separately, yes or no, I believe. We're just voting them one or the other. We have one board member in Zoom land, I believe. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 board members. That's great because it's an even number. I don't see what could go wrong there.
Might have to call Kate in.
Right. So let's see. So we have Al and we have Drew. So Al's nomination was first. So we will say all those in favor of voting for Al, please signify by raising your hand. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And all those in favor of supporting Drew, raise your hand. 4, 5, 6. So it appears that Drew is the new chair in a vote of 6-4. And without hearing any objections, I will turn the meeting over to Drew. Congratulations. Yeah, so you go from here just to share. So you have this additional addendum, which is the VSBA reorganization materials. The one on our agenda is pretty much a match. There's a few things on here we don't need to do, and there's one thing I need to add to this one, which is to authorize the chair to sign contracts. So if you want to add that to your list, and then go down the list, and we can double check to make sure the VSBA one is accurate compared to what we have, or no, we don't miss anything. But that's where this document comes from.
Thank you. And first, thank Al for being chair and working us through some difficult stuff. So I greatly appreciate Al's work. So nominations for vice chair. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go, Crystal.
Nominate Peter.
Peter's been nominated. Further nominations.
I nominate Joe Winridge.
I'll decline.
Joe has been nominated. Joe declines. Further nominations.
Nominate Al Claussen.
Al's been nominated. Al, do you accept?
I do.
Al accepts the nomination. We have nominations for Peter and Al. There's further nominations. Hearing none, nominations will close. All those in favor of Peter went first. Peter serving as your vice chair, raise your hand. See 1, 2, 3, 4. And I will serve as 5 votes. All those having Al serve as your vice chair, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So the chair should, if I have this correct, I'm not sure if this is true on all things, or if this was being included, the chair is not supposed to vote unless if it makes a tie, only to break a tie. Is that accurate?
Typically that is the way it goes.
So
it would be a 4 to 5 vote.
you'd have 4 to 5, and your vote would create a tie.
So I'll withdraw my vote so that it does not create the tie.
Fair.
So
All right. And for clerk, looking for nominations for clerk. Oh, come on.
Nominate Peter.
Peter's been nominated as our clerk. With further nominations.
Doing a good job there.
Hearing no further nominations for clerk, all those in favor of Peter serving as your clerk, please raise your hand. see unanimous vote. Here's now our clerk. We now need to elect, I believe it's 6.
I believe that's correct.
6 representatives to the SU board.
Can you remind me when that meets?
So it meets roughly quarterly, a little bit more during budget season, but roughly quarterly. They have not reorganized, but they will at the May meeting. So traditionally, they've, I believe, done on Wednesdays. It's the only board that reserves Wednesdays for those meetings that doesn't conflict with other boards.
Here.
Yeah, here. I'm trying to remember if they had, if it's the third, I think it's the third Wednesday. It's what it has been. Does that sound right there? Yeah. So, yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so who wants to serve on the WCSU board? All right, I see Al.
Emily wants.
I see Emily. There's 2.
Those I will.
Peter, Lindsay, Crystal, Joe. Is that?
Well, if you have too many, you let me know.
Sorry, so you have,
Put your hands back up again.
yeah.
Al, Joe.
It's traditionally the officers plus.
No, I'm sorry now.
So you,
Peter,
Peter,
6.
Drew.
Well, I would expect that
Go for it.
our officers should represent us at the WCSU level. So I would take myself out so that our officers have
Okay.
the ability to do that.
Emily, have your hand up.
I was just gonna, well, yeah, it's been up, it's been down, it's been up, it's been down. I was just gonna say, we haven't always had officers serve, only if they've wanted to, it's not required. But officers usually do serve at the WCSU, but we have had times in the past when officers couldn't fit it into their schedule. I just wanted to say that. It's up to officers.
So just so I'm keeping track at home here, I have Emily, Al, Joe, Crystal, Peter, Drew with a maybe I could pull out, right? So that is 6 if
Okay.
Lindsay is not one of them. And that does include all 3 officers.
Okay. Everybody good with that? Vote on the entire slate. Is everybody okay with that, or do you want to do it individually?
Take the whole slate.
Excellent.
Perfect.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have our WCSU representatives.
Still good.
Other committees, as we go down the list. Do we want other committees?
We,
And so we can establish committees or not establish committees. We get to choose what we do here, right? Not required, yes.
we talked about setting up a budget committee that was gonna meet on a quarterly basis.
If I may.
Yeah. Al, go ahead.
Yeah, we did. At the last meeting, we talked about how through the last budget process, it kind of came to our attention that we need to keep an eye on this year round. And that quarterly might be a good place to start. And that we have those meetings, do a deeper dive, line by line, make sure we know where we're at. So, yeah.
Committees would need to be less than 5, correct? Because we need to be less than a quorum.
Yeah, if you don't, I mean, you could warn a committee meeting too, so.
So if we're gonna have a committee, a budget committee, what would you recommend?
Mm-hmm. A budget committee,
Excellent.
quarterly budget committee.
Emily, your hand. I see you.
Sorry, I'm trying to eat dinner. I apologize. I'm between. I just swallowed wrong. I just want to make sure that we're really clear. Committees of our board cannot be a quorum, as you stated, Drew. If they are a quorum, they're the board. So, and we need to, because there's been some confusion about this, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I'm telling you what my understanding is, and I want to make sure everybody agrees. So if meetings need to be warned, even the committee meetings, because they're a committee of the board, even though they're not a quorum of the board, they are a committee. They need to be warned, minutes need to be taken, just basic minutes taken, and locations, all of that. So it's just really important. And the other thing I wanted to mention is did we just say about policy committee on the WCSU? Because we usually do appoint somebody to a policy committee at the WCSU. And I think we've been working on that. We didn't go to that part of the agenda.
No, I skipped that one. We'll go back to it.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we've talked about making sure that we're more engaged in policy, both at our board and at the SU level. So I think it's just really important. I don't want to do it, but I just want to think it's important.
All right, so Dana has recommended we put together, and Al supported, a budget committee. So we have people that would like to serve on the budget committee. Again, I agree, it needs to be less than 5. So the show of hands, so enthusiasm. All right, Peters, we're up to 3. Was that a volunteer or a question?
No, that was volunteer.
All right.
Yeah.
Al?
I'll do it.
All right, so we have 3 members of our budget committee.
Looks like Emily was like,
I have my hand up.
All right, Emily will be a member of our budget committee. And, all right, all those in favor of those 4 serving as our budget committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? So, back to Emily's question. So wouldn't it be the WCSU that appoints their own policy committee as opposed to us appointing someone to sit on their policy committee?
yeah, but I think what they've done in the past, at least this past year, is that if the individual boards wanted to put someone forward from their board to it, and someone often, you have regular policy committee for this as well.
Yep.
If you want it to be the same person, then they kind of serve them both, or maybe they don't want to do both, maybe just one, separate people, but yeah.
We could recommend to the WCSU
I think you
person.
could, yeah, I think if you're saying that of our 6, that should be one of the 6, you know. Well, this person wants to serve also on the policy committee. When the SU board reorganizes, they have a committee basically formed by the boards doing it.
So let's establish our policy committee and then we'll go from there.
Makes sense.
Are we going to have a policy committee?
It's a great question.
We have to choose if we want a policy committee or not.
Yes,
We
Probably
do,
would be a good
excellent.
idea.
So who would like to serve on our policy committee?
I will.
All right, we have 1, we have 2, Peter's volunteering,
Leanne.
Leanne's volunteering,
I'll do.
Crystal's volunteering, there's 4. Any other volunteers for the policy committee? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have a policy committee. Do we have a member of our policy committee that would like to volunteer to sit on the WCSU policy committee?
So just to give you a little heads up on that, a lot of the work might be the same because the policies, for example, that are legally required have to be legally required, adopted by both.
Yeah.
So like it's not maybe a lot more work. I also know that the SU person who has been leading that work doesn't want to lead that work anymore. So they may be looking for someone to lead that at the SU level as well. So
Yeah, she was trying to talk me into it. I'll take it.
you don't have to volunteer for that part now.
But I'm not touching the policy.
I know.
I have Lindsay, Peter, Leanne, and Crystal. That's who I have.
It's gotta be Peter.
It's gotta be Peter.
I've done
He's
it
the only one on both?
Yeah.
myself.
Well, again,
But
it could
I've
be
had to deal
someone
with
not.
budget.
Crystal
No,
is
it's definitely
also,
gotta be Peter.
Crystal is also on the SU board.
Crystal's fine, right? You wanna be on the WCSU or do you,
I don't want to be on.
WCSU policy?
Policy.
Right, no.
So Crystal said no.
Yeah.
So now we have Peter. Peter, would you like to serve on the WCSU policy committee?
Would I like to? Not particularly. Will I? Yes.
Excellent. He's enthusiastically accepting the
Your honesty.
nomination. So all those in favor of Peter serving as your WCSU policy committee representative, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? All right. Wyndham Regional Career Center.
One rep.
Who was our previous rep? Oh, it's Peter.
Peter.
Peter, do we have nominations or is anybody willing to serve on the Wyndham Regional Career Center?
And those are quarterly-ish,
Yeah,
every other
they're
month
quarterly.
maybe? Yeah.
They provide lunch. They're talking about providing better lunches this next year.
Where are they getting the money?
The Brattleboro School District is actually very efficient in their budgeting. But I can serve on that advisory committee again.
Peter has volunteered. Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor of Peter serving as your Career Center rep, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. All right. right, regular board meeting
So
schedule.
the other one I listed there just is long-term planning, LTP.
Oh, long-term.
I didn't know, like, don't know what the thought is, but thought I keep trying to like remind folks that that's something that's still hanging around.
That brings PTSD to me, so maybe skip over. Do we want to do, I mean, long-term planning is, can we do long-term planning under the current state political environment, Emily?
Of course,
how do we
can
plan
long-term planning, but it might be some futile effort. It might be, so like, I have no idea. We passed a bill out of our committee, as you all know. And, it's in Ways and Means. They're trying to do funding, formula for that. And then it'll go to appropriations and head over to the Senate. The Senate has a completely different perspective. But one thing I will say, I don't have any idea what it's going to look like. In the end, I do believe the one thing that there is pretty much general consensus across the board, and that is that this is the time to do some significant transformation, and I think our districts are going to change. At some point down the road, I'll speak for myself and my committee and the House. The bill we passed is to slow things down to allow our schools and our kids and our communities the time they need to adjust to the changes that are coming. But the governor wants very much to move fast, and I think the Senate is more interested in moving fast. So even the timeline, I think, is up in the air some. So long-term planning, we can put a lot of effort into it, and it might not, might be out of our hands in some ways. So I leave it up to the board.
Lindsay?
I would suggest that having a committee at this point may not be effective for another different reason, being that they wouldn't know what to do. Like, we as a board have not given any sort of direction towards long-term planning. We've brought some things forward. It hasn't gone the way we necessarily hoped it would, and that means that we as a board need to decide what to do. And if we as a board make some decisions that maybe a committee could be helpful with, then I would suggest that we would make one then. But I think any moves that we would choose to make now should happen as a full board.
I agree with what Lindsay said.
So I just want to point out that one of our constituents is frustrated with it being called long-term planning. They want it called future planning because they don't feel we are doing any long-term planning. So if we continue to do it, they want the name changed.
Planning, just plain planning.
So far, I'm not hearing a lot of support for creating a long-term planning committee right now. As a general consensus, we can always appoint a committee at a later date if we choose to. All right, so no long-term planning committee. All right, regular board meeting schedule.
So right now you are second Tuesday, is that right?
No.
No? You are the Monday, I'm sorry, you're Monday.
Yep.
Today's Tuesday, second Monday. Thus far, the other boards, Wyndham's different. They moved theirs to a noon meeting, so it won't interfere with anything you would pick. So I think we have Marlboro's on a Thursday, River Valley's is on the first and third Mondays, and Stratton's also on Tuesdays. So the Monday, as long as it fits in between the two River Valleys ones, works fine for central office administration.
It would seem to me that the schedule everybody was on seemed to fit. So if one board decides to change and screw that up, we're going to create a
Create a
fun
change,
little ripple.
Yeah.
So
I'm fine with keeping it.
anybody object to keeping our meeting schedule?
I'm good.
All right, need a motion to that effect?
So I would move that we keep our regular meeting schedule the same.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Locations for posting agendas.
So law requires 3 physical locations. We post at central office and each of the schools and each of the town offices. So that's covered, your minimum of 3. So you can just maintain that if you wish. And town offices and schools will always have paper copies. And of course, online on the SU website.
So moved.
What he said.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue posting where we have been posting. Is there further discussion? Yes.
I will say that a possibility for further locations, if we wanted to see if we could attract more people with them, is posting at the country stores of each town, or Riverbank for the case of Townsend.
If they let you.
I'm assuming you guys are able to send things to the town offices, so you don't have to physically drive and like.
It's an
tag
email,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would be,
I would also say, we don't have, it's cool to post them more places than we designate, but we don't need to designate additional places either, because then that just means that if we designate that as a place and then we don't post it, now it's a problem. Whereas if we don't designate it and we post there, it's just cake.
You only need 3. So.
further discussion. The current motion on the table is to post the same way we did last year in all the same locations. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? So, you want to agree to use Robert's rules?
Are we
That's a-
allowed to not use Robert's rules?
You can use whatever rules you want.
There are other rules, maybe. I'm not familiar with any of them, but
I'm a fan of Robert.
you seem like a good guy.
Seems like a good guy.
Emily, you had a comment?
I operate under other rules up here, and that's Mason's rules, and I would recommend we stay with Robert's. Mason's, I'm just saying it's different, and we're used to Robert's.
Yeah.
All right, is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Give a second.
I'll second.
Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. VSBA Code of Ethics.
So this is a creation of the VSBA. It's a code of ethics for board members. You can see it's in your supplementary packet. Sometimes boards will make a statement and a motion to agree to follow them. Sometimes members individually sign them and the chair collects them. Other times they just agree to do it. Some boards don't do it at all. It's entirely up to you.
So we'll open the floor for discussion.
I think we've even in the past signed it and posted it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You know, and given the level of transparency we're all trying to convey, I don't see any problem with signing it.
Yeah. I didn't think you ever had a choice. Really?
Well, this acknowledges that you understand these rules exist and that you agree to follow them.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Emily,
Sorry, I'm trying not to interrupt. I wanted to also agree with what Joe just said. I also want to make sure that we are actually having a little conversation about this in light of the challenges that we're dealing with all over the state, country, world. I think it's really important that we recognize our commitment to transparency and ethical behavior as elected officials. And so I think it's important to read it, believe in it, and no, people don't have to sign. There are people who don't sign, I think, and they have a right to not sign, I guess. But I think that this board should be committed as a board to this document.
I support it.
other discussion. we don't want to take a position as a board?
I think we should sign.
Seems fun. I don't oppose signing, certainly.
All right. So I don't know that we need a motion for board members to sign a document, which would be under their own free will anyway. But it seems the consensus of the board is
I'd
that,
actually like to make a motion that
Okay.
we sign as a board. I don't have the document right in front of my face here because I have to change screens to do it. So
Right.
whatever the name of the document is from the VSBA ethics, tell me what it says.
Code of Ethics for Vermont School Board Members.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
That's my motion.
that is Emily's motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion on the motion to have the board sign the Code of Ethics for Vermont School Board members? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Designate a newspaper. Are there still newspapers?
There are, apparently, I've seen them time to time. I guess Reformer has been the paper of record in recent years.
Okay. Do we have a motion for a paper of record?
Make a motion to have the Brattleboro Reformer as our paper of record.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, we have further discussion on having the Brattleboro Reformer as our paper of record. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Designated truancy officer.
So we don't have a truancy officer, so what we've done in the past is contracted with the Windham County Sheriff's Department, and they are available sort of as needed for truancy work, and that's been the arrangement we've done since I was principal of the undergrad. We've been doing that. So it'd be designated the Windham County Sheriff's Department.
I would move that.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? We have the Windham County Sheriff's Office serve as our truancy officer. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. All right. Now, our supplemental sheet.
Wait, do we need to authorize you to sign?
Yeah, I'm switching over to the other sheet to you, supplemental sheet. So we need a motion to authorize the chair to sign contracts.
I would make that motion.
And I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Further discussion. Can we designate more than one person to sign contracts? In the office of the
I
chair?
think you could do a chair and vice chair probably, yeah, just in case. Which actually, that reminds me, similarly, well, do this first, and we'll come back to this. Okay.
I'm happy to make that amendment.
Accept that as a, you accept that as a seconder? That the chair and the
Yes.
vice chair be designated as having the ability to sign? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? Did you want to add something before?
On a different issue,
Okay.
finish this up, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries.
Pay orders. Authorized signers on pay orders. Could be different than the authorized signers for contracts, which is what your motion was. Yep. So I believe it's been Dana and Joe who've been doing it.
Add that
I just need to be
one
able to change who gets things if you're changing. If you're not changing, then you're good.
You want to keep doing it? Sure. I'll keep doing it.
Is that a motion from somebody?
Yeah, I moved that.
All right, we
I'll
have a motion.
second it.
We have a second.
Mhm.
There's further discussion on the motion to have Dana and Joe authorized to sign the pay orders. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Sure, there's nothing else. Communication practices is on this other list, is that?
I mean, I don't believe you guys have had anything in place for that in the past. That's just part of the VSBA checklist. This comes from their site as well, so I don't know if there have been. I mean, certainly not in the year I've been here, but maybe previously, I don't know.
I'm not familiar with this new this year one at the bottom.
That's from 2018, so it's new in 2018. Document hasn't changed on the VSBA website. I think you're good on that one.
All right. So before we go into the regular agenda, is there anything else in the reorganization meeting that we need to do?
That's all that I can think of. I might be missing some stuff, but that's, you can also add things later if you decide you need that in a committee or whatever, so.
All right. So I do not have the board norms in front of me. Al did a great job of reading them at every meeting. I will get them so that I can read them for the meetings. But for tonight, we will move on to the next agenda item. Is there any changes to our agenda this evening?
So I have a couple of minor ones, under new business 1A, the second request, if it's not crossed out on your agenda, it should be, so cross out the name Schaefer. Do you have a name? Do you have names there or no?
No.
No, it's just my copy then. So we have one less tuition request than you had at the beginning of the day. And you have, under principal's report, when Dan does principal's report, we'll do a sidebar to talk about early college. So just give you that heads up. And Heidi, did I miss anything else?
No, you're good. That's what I wanted.
All right. And you said we had no student for this evening? No student report?
Yeah, we were gonna have, well, there may be a student, but we were gonna have the students from PBL intensives do a presentation, but because of timing, they're gonna move it to May instead. So we'll do a presentation on intensives at the May meeting. So.
All right, moving right along, public comment. Any public in Zoom land? No public comment, we'll move on to old business. Annual meeting and budget debrief.
So we put that on there at the time just to give people an opportunity if there was a discussion about the annual meeting, people wanted to debrief, people wanted to change anything, talk about how it went, any sort of opportunity for debrief. And of course, we have the budget debrief on there. In the event that the budget did not pass, we would have an opportunity to talk about what's next. But your budget did pass. You can still debrief it, I suppose, but that's where you are on those two. So happy to take any feedback on the annual meeting, and you guys can process that.
Thank you for all the work to get all of the reports out.
Yeah, it's central office team, kicking some butt there, so.
Sorry, not enough votes out there.
I mean, the turnout's low, right? I mean, and I think you guys moved your vote next year into April, beginning of April. I mean, it's not aligned with a town meeting or a presidential or whatever election, so your numbers are always going to be down. So I don't know how to boost that. We thought the one pager would help bring more people out. People would be more informed. I don't know if that was seen by a lot of people. We certainly saw it shared on some of your guys' social media. We sent it out to families, but we don't have, the ability to send it out to every person in the town, or all the towns, I should say. So, not sure if that was effective or not. I'd love to hear feedback on that because that was a little bit of work to do. It was new for us. So, curious what people thought about that.
I don't know how many, I don't know how many people saw it, but the people that I spoke with about it really were appreciative of it. It was very helpful to the people who I know saw it.
So maybe next year it's about how do we get it out more, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the numbers that were sad for the amount of money. It was sad.
Do we know how the voter turnout was compared to previous years?
I could look that up. I didn't make notes of that. I got the sense from when I went over to talk to the clerks who were doing the counting afterwards that it was lower than they expected. But I didn't compare it to last year. So, and of course it's an overall number commingled, so we don't know which certain towns had more or less. So it's just some total numbers all we have.
The spreadsheet that was sent to us was a little confusing on the breakdown of the 10 columns. Do you know what I'm no.
I do know what you're referencing, but it's not my spreadsheet. It's the one that they use to tabulate. So our district clerk is the one that puts that together, and she organizes the town clerks and the ballot counting.
I might be able to expand on that because
Yeah.
I've seen some of the practices. When they're counting the ballots, they break them into groups that different people go through, like stacks of
25.
25 in this case.
Okay.
And then they shuffle them through and they're all counting to make sure.
And then
Gotcha.
you add the numbers.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Thanks.
Any further discussion about our annual meeting?
It's not well attended. I don't know if you guys noticed. It's very small.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there.
And I think because the budget is a lot of conversation and meetings leading up to it, and you're not voting on the budget in that session, I mean, maybe it's a sign that everyone was informed. Or it's a sign that nobody turns out for this stuff anyways. I don't know.
All right. Tuition request update.
So this is the request you heard last week. The only new information I have to give you is that a different school district board will be meeting on the 8th to consider an alternative request. And then they will report back to me. I thought they'd have it done prior to this meeting. I was hoping to have the answer, but they did not take it up at their last meeting, they take it up at their next meeting. So I'll share that with the board once I get that information. But I want you to know, I followed the instructions of the board, reached out to the other district, and they put it on their board agenda.
All right. So the minutes from March 10th. Motion for the minutes.
I will move that we accept the minutes from Monday, March 10th.
Motion. One second.
Second.
Do we have any corrections for the minutes? Any discussion on the minutes?
The present board, that looks like a good list there. I think everything is how we've been talking about, and that looks good. Wanted to acknowledge the fact that I don't think that we need any corrections on that. That list looks good.
If we're gonna,
Oh.
you brought it up. I was gonna let it go. There's no E on the end of my name.
Alright.
First or last?
All of them. No weeks.
Yes.
Both of them.
And I went through that twice to make sure they spelled your name right.
So Leanne ends in an N, is what you're saying. Okay.
Okay, well, I would amend to get that spelling right this time.
Alright.
We're on it.
Any further discussion on the minutes?
I think we ought to just keep the E on there.
Say
it's all right.
Have you change your name, it might be easier. All right, all those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. So we have correspondence that we got that we're taking that up later. Is there any other correspondence?
That's the only one I have.
Okay, so we'll be taking up the correspondence under the tuition request discussion later. Financials, you have a chance to go through the.
Yep. You want me?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion making a motion to approve pay order 64 for $67,662.11. Pay order 65 for $158.36. For pay order 67 for $10,519.48. And 68 for $6,024.22.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the pay orders as listed. Are there discussions or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the pay orders?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. All right, moving to new business. Tuition requests for the school year.
Supplemental packet, last page. This is a pre-K, current pre-K student who's a Jamaica resident attending JVS, who is requesting, under the same statute as before, others have come to you for, to request that the child attend Wardsboro Elementary School based on proximity and some other factors as explained in the email. So it's the same statute you guys have ruled on before. They have some information about location and mileage listed.
So do we, I know on the previous tuition request that we have approved, it has been people that had to drive past one school in order to get to another, and so instead of driving past a school to get to another, we approved that. Is that the same situation here or a different?
Yeah, just to clarify, it didn't have to be that. Some of those families did do that though. That's correct. That was their testimony around their proximity. The law itself only describes that the education can be more conveniently furnished based on geographical considerations. That's the language. It doesn't talk about distance from one. That's not part of it. That's how this board has interpreted it for the previous ones. So in this case, they're saying it's 6 miles. It doesn't say how far it is to Townsend on here. I don't know if maybe some people on the board know where this person lives and can vouch that it is more than 6 miles to Townsend from the house, or maybe it's not. I don't know. My instructions to families were to include both measurements so that the board could cleanly see the difference.
Emily.
Thanks. I just actually have a question. Well, it's for clarity. So we have been doing these because we have closed the grades K through 5 in Jamaica because we didn't have staffing. So it's essentially an emergency closing. So the school is only open for pre-K. So I think I'm right about that. And that's what's driving these tuition requests and approvals by us. So are we, and I just can't remember how we worded it before, but I know we had some support from attorney on this. This is essentially a one-time deal each year. Is that correct, that we have to approve them every year, and it's because of the emergency closure, and trying to make sure that our students and their families are supported in this difficult time? Am I assessing that correctly?
That's how I remember it. You did renew some already this spring for next year to do 2 years, but they were done individually, year for year. And yes, you didn't have any of these requests until such time that JVS was not operating K-5.
Great. I just want to make sure that, not knowing what the future looks like, that we know what the parameters are around this, so we're not setting precedent. Because the Jamaica school is part of the West River district that doesn't have choice, and Wardsboro, Dover, River Valley schools do. So I just want to make sure that families understand the difference between the two. This is an emergency situation, and our students need to be educated.
Yeah, and each of the families who I've had conversations with and email exchanges with, I've been very clear that this, if continued year to year, been very clear, this is a board decision every year, that if they get through grade 5, grade 6 would be back here at Leland and Gray, because the district offers only one grade 6 and it's here, so why would they pay to go somewhere else? So Wardsboro, for example, has a 5-6 class that's combined. The second half of that experience, the kids would be coming back here, and that the board would, the way I described it is, the board would probably not be inclined to support a 6th grade year to finish out the experience at Wardsboro, because we offer 6th grade here. That's the same distance for everybody. So that's how I've explained it to families. They all have heard that from me.
Sarah, you have your hand up?
Great, thank you for the clarity.
Lindsay's next.
I would really like for us as a board to have a discussion about which things we want to approve and why, and I would like to have like very clear reasoning. That is, you are X miles closer, or you are within whatever parameters. I just feel like we are making these decisions without having first had the discussion of what meets this. I want to be completely fair to everybody that asks, but I don't think that everybody that asks necessarily would meet the same requirements. Anyway, I just feel like we should know what we're talking about when we say, yes, that's more conveniently furnished. I feel like we should know what that means.
You know? When this all came about, we lost 2 teachers. So we could not provide education from K through 5. So we had to find a home for these kids. We offered them something a little more convenient for those kids who lived on the other side. This is a pre-K student. She came in as a pre-K student. She was not affected by the sudden teacher loss of K through 5. She's part of a new group of kids coming into pre-K. I thought that this whole tuition thing to Wardsboro was just for these individuals who were on that side of the hill, and that was it. And once they graduated out of 5th grade and come back here to 6th, they're now part of our regular district. And I thought that would be the end of this tuition stuff. By accepting this tuition, we're going to go into deficit spending, definitely. We're not there already. So I'm kind of stating that this is going to continue and snowball into something more, because the next person will say, the next group of kids that come out of pre-K, oh, I want to go here and I want to go there. And you're starting to get into that inter-district thing or out-of-district thing. It will lead to more problems. So I've made my decision. I said my spiel. Crystal.
So, I would think that we would need to know, are they closer to Wardsboro School or are they closer to Townsend School? But also, does the bus go by their house? So, I don't know. The way I understood it was that if geographically they are closer to Wardsboro, then they can appeal to the Board of Education and they could say, well, they're closer to that school, so we have to allow it.
So as where I live in South Newfane, Williamsville, I am sure I'm closer to Dover Elementary School. I have never once considered that it's more convenient for me to go to Dover, despite that's a great school. Maybe I would have wanted to, I don't know. I think we should know what more conveniently furnished means, because like a 1 mile difference in driving, or a 3 mile or a 5 mile, or what's the number? Like if it's 10 miles out of my way, if it's gonna take me an extra half an hour, those things are very significant. But if it's like a 2.5 minute difference in your commute, then maybe that's a stretch for more conveniently furnished. So I just want us as a board to, I personally feel very uncomfortable making a decision about this. Well, 1, because I don't feel like I have enough information, but 2, because I don't think that we have something definitive to be making the decision based on.
All right, go ahead, Sarah.
Would it be reasonable to table this until we have more information? I think I would like to know the distance, for all the ones we've already approved, the distance from their house to Wardsboro versus Townsend. And then for this one, the distance from Wardsboro to Townsend, because I think we have to be consistent at very least. I think we really need to know that before we can.
So, just take a step back. So this year, the earlier ones that you renewed this spring, this is the first new one you've had for next year, right? The other ones were renewals of things, reaffirming decisions you've made in the past. So this is the first new one. I recall last year talking about the mileage as trying to actually be concrete around that. So to give you that information, this particular family is 5 miles from home to Wardsboro, 7 miles from home to Townsend. So it's a 2 mile difference, just to have that, okay? And then to come back to the statute, to get to Lindsay's point around what are we looking at? What's the determinant? Well, the determinant is if in the board's judgment, the student's education can be more conveniently furnished there, meaning the new school, due to geographic considerations. So, and again, this only applies to an adjacent district, in other words, physically bordering, that has a public school, a public elementary school. It's only for elementary schools. So it's narrowly defined in statute anyways. And then if the family disagrees with the board decision, they can appeal to the Secretary of Education, who can override the board and direct the tuition to be paid. So just so you have that. So that's, I think, hopefully all the information you're looking for. I think you could, as a board, develop either a policy, if you chose, that would take the law and go further, or direct the administration to develop a procedure for how to handle it. Either way, you could do that. But the law is the law. You can't. It would have to be further defining the law. You can't go.
But it does say in there, for the board's judgment, so I personally feel like it's hard to make a judgment as a board without some
And geographic considerations too is, I mean, if the person, it could be, maybe it's not in this case, just to speak hypothetically, there's a family that travels, it's shorter from their house to Townsend, but they work in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And they need after school care, which doesn't have after busing, and so to pick the kid up, it's more convenient to, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of variables there. So it's really just your judgment. There's really no other way to nail that down. If you go by what the family tells you, which is right here, and you make a motion to accept it or not accept it based on, and then you vote, and that determines the judgment of the board.
Here,
we could also though take no action on this, couldn't we? Rather than accept or decline it? Or do we have to accept or decline it because we are getting this request?
Well, I think that because so the law states upon request of the student's parent or guardian. So in other words, the parent, upon that request, it puts the board on the spot to make a judgment, and then within 30 days of that decision, the parent or guardian can appeal. So if you don't make a decision and you just don't ever respond to them, you're probably not following the law because they've made a formal request.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
So,
then I would say that we unfortunately don't receive enough information in this. And if any other requests come forward, I would really encourage people to be at the meeting so that we could ask them direct questions. But this just does not provide enough information based off of what the legislation is saying.
all right, so we've had discussion. Are we ready to move this question in one direction or another? Do we need more discussion?
I think we should table it to the next meeting and see if they give us more information.
So from what Bob just said, we can't do that because they are requesting it now. I mean, we have this request.
I mean, it's April 1st, so I think there's wiggle room if you wanted more information. I guess I would, this gets to Lindsay's point, like what is the more information you're looking for? What's the critical point that's gonna push you in one direction or the other if the statute is what it is? I think that's the challenge. What more information do you want than what they provided? And I just gave you some additional mileage. Like I don't know what else you'd be looking for. I'm happy to tell them what you're looking for if you want to direct me to do so, or to just appear at the May meeting and answer questions on spot. But I think this gets to Lindsay's point. We don't really have a thing. There's no list of things to check the boxes on. There's just the statute, which is quasi vague, right? And the other thing I'll just add to this is that if you keep in mind that you're paying tuition, you are keeping the ADM. If you're not paying tuition and the people leave the district, and that has happened to one, we do not get the ADM for that. So just keep that in mind as well.
So, I mean, I think the statute is vague on purpose to give boards the ability to use that judgment. And I think it would be fair for us to ask them some more questions. I mean, geographically convenient is really what the statute says. And they don't lean into geographically convenient in the documentation we have, other than to say it's 6 miles from their house. And then they start talking about all kinds of other experiences and value and outdoor, and that's all nice, but that's not what we can hang our hat on statutorily. Do they work in this direction? Is there after school care in this direction? Is it 5 and 7 miles like you said, and is the 7 miles on dirt road and the 5 isn't, or how does that all work? We just need a little bit. I think if we go back to them and say, look, this is geographically convenient. That's what the statute gives us. Lean into that. Keep the other stuff if you want, but and come back again and ask it a little differently with some more background. We could do it, or show up at the meeting and answer the questions. But I think this is just not quite a strong enough application to meet the test of the statute to give us what we need. And I don't think, to Lindsay's point, that we can sit down and say, here are the criteria. You must be X, Y, Z. Because every one of these cases is discretionary to the board. It's like, well, what are the factors here? A lot of the people last time, we drive past the Wardsboro school to get to the Jamaica school. Well, that's a no-brainer. Some of the other ones, maybe not so much, but I don't think we can lay out criteria, really. We can just ask questions every time.
I agree with you, Joe. I was actually rereading the wording of this, and there's a section where they're like, it's within 6 miles of our home, alleviating further transport difficulties. I would like to know more about what those difficulties are. Is it, like you said, connections for after school care, work? Is it because it saves you on 4 miles of gas per day? Like, what's the reasoning? How does that help their transportation difficulties?
So if I'm hearing the discussion, I can go back, it was the board's wish, to the family and ask for them to spell out that specific element due to geographic considerations, maybe speak to alleviating further transport difficulties, and provide a newer, more detailed version, and perhaps show up in person to discuss if there's further questions, if it's still not clear. If that's what the board wishes to do, I can certainly do that. We can have that for the May meeting. There's plenty of time. I think we're still acting in good faith to your question. Like, we're not just ignoring it. We're asking for more information. So I think we're statutorily okay on that.
See head nodding around the room. That seems to be the consensus of the board.
Can I just?
Go ahead.
I just want to sort of put the other face on this, which is this does, I think Dana got to it for a second, but this does cost us money to do this. I mean, we're paying tuition outside of our district to do this. So I think we have a responsibility as a board to make sure that we're being reasonable and responsible in our approvals of these emergency tuition payments. And maybe we need to think a little more clearly, because as I've read this, and I don't know if there's an updated version, but the version I got as I read it, it had less to do with the geographic than other items. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we understand, because, you know, we could get many more requests if we're not very thoughtful about how we go through this. I think it's a very unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in, and it speaks to the challenges that we're feeling statewide.
And I'll just add, I think the only thing I would maybe narrow a little bit of what Emily's saying is that this is the uniqueness of having a school close for K-5 and having an adjacent school building literally on the border. Like, it's not in the center of Wardsboro, it's on the Wardsboro-Jamaica town line, basically. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, so it is unique in that regard. I don't think there's any place else you could live, potentially, in Drew's house maybe notwithstanding, that you could find another adjacent district's public elementary school that might be closer than going to Townsend. Maybe you guys to Flubber, I don't know. But, like, it's really because of where Wardsboro is located, so close. Yeah, so, I mean, maybe you guys too, I guess, if you have South Newfane area. But anyway, so that's what I was going to say, because of Wardsboro's location, how close it is to the border of Jamaica, that's what makes it also tougher, right? Or more open, I guess.
Can I ask just one other quick question?
Yeah.
Space availability at Townsend?
Yes, he says yes, there is space available.
We're not at capacity. We have space for our students in Jamaica.
Correct. This is for a incoming kindergartner?
Yeah.
Yes, we have space.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on this topic? We're going to move on. All right, so TES PreK 26. Wow.
Let me set them up while you're handing that out.
Sure.
So, you know, with this year being the first year of having pre-K in Jamaica,
Thank you.
what happened was, for those of you that are not familiar, in Townsend, we had a 3-year-old room and a 4-year-old room, both in the same building. When we moved a room to Jamaica, we, in essence, we didn't just move one of those rooms to Jamaica, we mixed the grades of both of those spaces, right? So the Jamaica room is 3 and 4-year-olds, and the Townsend room is 3 and 4-year-olds. The Jamaica room is 7 or 8 kids, and it's small, and the mix has been, a challenge, but a much less significant challenge because of the numbers. In Townsend, that mix is a greater challenge because of the larger numbers. And so the teacher and Randy got together, and I'll let him take over from here. And then when he's done sort of sharing this, we're gonna just lob a grenade into the whole conversation, but I'll let him go first.
Great. So
Looking forward to it.
Bob shared a lot of the historical context that I was going to try to paint for you, with the fact that there had previously been a 3-year-old classroom and a 4-year-old classroom, and so now we have this mix of 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds in one classroom of 19 children, which presents particular challenges for the staff. And you'll remember that previously this year I came to you asking for additional support for specifically that classroom and our first grade classroom in the form of a paraprofessional. And so looking ahead to the upcoming school year and thinking about what we might do to plan for a better experience for our pre-K students and for our staff there, we've come up with this plan. We also know that there is a private preschool in Brookline that is going to be closing in Brookline and moving to Brattleboro, and so there may be some an indeterminate number of students there who are going to be looking for the public option. And so we do not know the number of potential 4-year-olds that may be coming to register here in Townsend. And so currently, we have a combination of 19 students in our pre-K class, combination of 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. And so what we are planning on, looking forward to the next year, is to begin registration and opening registration for students who will be turning 4 before September 1st. Opening registration exclusively for children who are turning 4, and giving priority to children who are turning 4 first, to see how many of those children are out there, and accepting registration for those children first. And if we reach 15 students in that initial period, then we would only continue to accept children who are turning 4 until we reach the maximum capacity of that classroom, which is up to 20 students for that year. We already have 7 students that we have as 3-year-olds. We're anticipating that those students will likely re-enroll as 4-year-olds. We also have we know of about 4 other students from private preschools that are likely coming to us, several of whom have significant needs, which are also considerations in this scenario, right? Because those needs also impact the classroom as well. If by the end of the initial registration period we don't reach 15 4-year-olds, we would then open it up to 3-year-olds. But then we would cap the enrollment at 15 students total. So that if we would have a commingled class again of 3 and 4-year-olds starting at the beginning of the year, we would have a maximum capacity of 15 students. We would not go to the total allowable amount that's allowed by the state of 20. We would cap the class at 15 to be able to provide a better experience to all of the students who are in the classroom. And so we think that would really be the best plan moving forward to not have the challenges that we faced this year. Now Bob wants to.
Well, so to add to that just a little bit, so you mentioned the hand grenade, which was the Susie's.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
stole my hand grenade.
Stole the hand grenade.
Currently at Susie's, we believe that there are 2 of our resident students who are 3 who would be 4-year-olds for next year. So there's potential for those 2 to maybe come to us, maybe not, we don't know, but that's how many current 3-year-olds of our residents are at Susie's right now. So that just gives you a context. It's 2 plus the others that you mentioned that you knew of. And so, yeah, so in thinking about this, so what I said to Randy is like, well, let's plan for what makes sense for you as far as providing an opportunity for a higher quality situation for staff and for the students, and doing it in a way that is tiered, and this is what he created. So we want to share that with you guys, and we want to just lob out the idea about the Susie's piece. We had gone down the road a piece with the controlling powers for approving a pre-K room at Newbrook last year, and then we pulled it and shifted to JVS, right? And so the potential to do that if we felt the numbers were going to be high, and we didn't want this plan to leave kids out in the cold, so to speak, we could, go to that plan B, if you will, of having a pre-K at Newbrook. But just full cautionary tale on that one. It's not in the budget. It would be 2 new staff like we have the 2 at JVS. There'd be some cost for setup in the facility. There'd be some displacement of staff that are currently in a room there that are SU staff that are providers to kids in the West River there. but you get a little bit of revenue off that, I believe, for rent, and they have a space to provide that service to the kids at Newbrook. So like, there's a lot of moving pieces. It's not ideal, but we want to just throw that out there to you guys as an opportunity. The real downside of that, that's sort of the red flag that's hanging out there, that if your JVS staff wish to apply for those openings, you might not have staff at JVS again. And so there it is. So we wanted to lay all that out for you along with this, so that you guys had sort of the full picture of what this situation is. But the initial plan came out of an intent to make the situation at Townsend more tolerable for staff and have the experience for the students be better, and that's what the tiered approach is. So we're looking for any feedback you might have, but this is what we're hoping to do, or any questions you have about Susie's or anything else we can maybe answer for you.
One other option that I wanted to let you know that we decided not to pursue, that some other schools currently do for their preschool, was to have 3-year-olds attend half day and 4-year-olds attend a full day. And there are schools that do it that way. We just felt that the consistency of full day for families, because some families do have 2 children, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and that having dismissals at different times of the day, and things that having the students once they were there, the impact was really the same for as far as we were concerned. So we thought that having a cap on the classroom was probably the better approach to take, rather than having 19 students or 20 students for half a day and then having the 3-year-olds leave midday. Because if part of the goal of with the 4-year-olds is to be able to have an opportunity to give them a little bit more of academic or pre-academic exposure, right? Doing that in the afternoon is not the best time of the day for that, right? The best time of the day is really in the morning. That's probably true for all kids, really. Morning is really the best time for learning. So having smaller numbers in the class where they can actually break kids up into smaller groups, 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds, really makes the most sense.
All right, questions, discussion? Good.
So, September 1, is that a hard and fast rule for anything other than kindergarten and thereafter? In terms of the age, being that age beforehand?
So that's the date that the state uses for kindergarten and thereafter, and so that seems to be the date that we.
That's what our policy says.
Okay, so I was just going to suggest, if we are concerned about, basically they would be 3 years old and a day, and after they start on September 1, can we pull that date back to, say, July 1st to ensure that the kids are 3 years and a couple months, where, just gain a little age. I don't know how many 3-year-olds we would have, but that could just potentially be a gating factor, and also make them a little older when they enter. Just a thought.
Could you remind me what the current situation at JVS is for pre-K in terms of numbers, or potential numbers, I guess? And is there any reason to think that any 3-year-olds that don't fit in Townsend, if that is the case, couldn't still have a place to go?
So currently at JVS, I think that there are 7 students enrolled, or 8.
No, 7, one of whom is a 4-year-old. The others are all three.
The others are all three, so they'll be turning 4. And so there is room in that, in that program there. Not knowing, how many are, again, in the offing, ready to register for the upcoming year. But there's,
Just a hypothetical, there was talk of revisiting the closure vote.
In town?
So that might make things even more interesting.
Hold on. Like, the town wants to reconsider it?
Maybe. I was approached during town meeting. Like maybe the town might want to revisit that.
Don't they have to wait a year then
I
to
don't know.
reconsider?
I don't know. It's just a hypothetical, just talk, but.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear what you said. The town revisiting what?
They might want to revisit the closure vote.
Oh, okay.
There was some talk. And maybe they were thinking it might be a different outcome.
But the language of the red articles say that the board has to request that they close their school. So
Yeah.
they would have to get us to request that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's not in our best interests
Maybe
anymore.
it's not
I don't
at
know.
this point. Yeah, I don't know.
I do have a question.
Good.
Ken. So I was following along trying to, do we have sort of a reasonable guess of how likely these scenarios are to happen at all? I mean, the numbers that I got, it doesn't sound like this is really gonna be an issue. We have 7 and we might pick up 2 and there's a couple more here, but we
Right
still
now-
aren't hitting the cap, so.
Right now, it appears, in my guesstimate, I believe that we are likely to get, right now, 13 4-year-olds. But I don't know. Because I don't know if there are 4-year-olds in this community that I don't know about. There are 2 at Susie's. There are 4 at other private preschools that have indicated that they would like to come to Townsend. And I know about them because through the special education early services, and we have 7. That's 13.
Okay.
So to extend that scenario you're asking about, so if all 13 were to go to Townsend, following these rules, he'd be able to take 2 3-year-olds. And any other 3-year-olds that want, and it would, I assume there's a process for first come, first serve. That any of the other 3-year-olds, or even later 4-year-olds, that they would still have access to JVS. Which may or may not be convenient for them, but that would be an option available for the district.
Okay. Do we have a sense of 3-year-olds at all? No.
So those are tougher to predict.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some outreach.
I mean, their parents know.
Stuff, and their parents know, and I just didn't know if we had any ideas. Okay.
So previously we had like homeschool rules and sibling preference rules around school. So can we, I don't know, we have a policy around that?
On the
Can we
individual
go to-
choice, you mean?
Yeah, so since we have a policy on that, can we go to a first come, first serve on
Well, your
this?
choice policy, I don't think it includes pre-K.
I believe it's specifically.
I think it's just K
Just
5.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do whatever you want for the pre-K.
Lindsay?
Is there any reason we might want to move that May 10th date to like June 10th? Because if we are kind of expecting there to be maybe 2 spots potentially, and then we take 1 3-year-old, and then somehow people are like, oh, I didn't realize, and there's 3 4-year-olds that want to go, but now we don't have room for you. But if we didn't have the 3-year-old, we would have had room. I'm just wondering if it makes sense at all to wait. I understand that it's difficult for families to not know way ahead of time. But it is, it is still several months before, the kid would be going, even in June.
I'll be honest with you. I was really juggling the dates because I was trying to really be considerate of families' needs to be able to plan for the future, because they do have to try to find a space for their children somewhere. And I know how competitive that can be and how challenging that can be. And so being able to balance our needs with, the community's needs. And I think that maybe there's a happy medium between, May 9th and June 9th, and maybe it's somewhere in between that. But I appreciate the recommendation, like maybe finding something in between so that it does provide a buffer.
Also, sorry.
Right.
Also knowing that JVS does exist, it's not like we're saying that there's no possible choice here, and it may not be convenient to drive there, but it's probably not convenient to drive to Brattleboro either. Or maybe it is, in which case your decision was probably made anyway, and anyway. Sorry.
Are we assuming a similar cap for JVS, 15 students? So we're gonna have a total of 30.
Well,
30.
There's a different scenario at JVS because of the level of staffing that you currently have there. And so they are currently capped at 12 because of the 2 staff members that you have.
So we'd have a 28 total preschool cap.
27.
20.
12 and
Yeah.
15.
Good call.
That's why it's here.
Elementary math. If it was trigonometry, we'd be looking down there, but elementary math I can help you with.
Thank you.
So this is typically more of a procedural thing, we're not asking you to adopt a policy. So really, we were looking for just like, this sounds like it makes sense. There is a potential to lose a couple of kids, but JVS certainly will have space. We know that there's a potential they wouldn't want JVS, but there's also potential that the 2 kids at Susie's are going to Brattleboro anyways. Like, where Susie's moves, they just go with Susie to Brattleboro. Like, we don't know. So we really just wanted to see, unless people had like major philosophical objections to this, it was more informational, but looking for some feedback, I guess, one way or another. But it's not a policy. We're not asking you to adopt. We're just sort of informing you and saying, does this make sense? Because they're going to come to you probably to complain.
Here.
I think I'll just go and agree with Lindsay, but also your medium of maybe 1 or 2 weeks after May 9th, rather than May 9th, providing a little bit more lead time than just a month, as just an idea.
And advertise the Jesus out of it.
How do we deal with tuition students? Is there so Wyndham students, for example, that maybe wanted to come to preschool, is there a hold off on making decisions on tuition students until?
For them, it'd be as space allows. So we probably would wait to the end date to see whether or not it filled, and then accept people based on that. Unless there was an existing 3-year-old, then maybe you would let them in because they'd be 4 and they're already there. But I don't know if there is. Randy's still thinking, but I don't think there is. But something like that would make sense to me, just off the top of my head.
What about move-ins?
Yeah, if it's full, it's full. That would happen whether it was a mixed grade or one single grade. I don't think we've been at capacity in recent years. We've been close. Katie, maybe we've been close, right? Maybe in the neighborhood of capacity, but
This year we got
by 1, yeah. So, but we haven't. It doesn't sound like we've turned kids away in recent years either. So
We made it to 20, and then we had the student, a student started and then left. So we made it to 20, and then we went back down to 19. It's if we have people move in and want to come, it's not compulsory, so it's not required. You know, if it were, if it were first grade, we'd have to take them.
Yeah.
Right? There's no choice, but it's not required.
All right. So there's no action needed.
Yes, what I'm, just to reflect back what I'm hearing is that maybe some flexibility on the date, but conceptually people seem okay. No one wants to talk about Newbrook at this time. We're just gonna continue to move. All right, thank you.
All right. Principals report. Who wants to start? Scotty, the camera just came on.
He's not. Oh,
Well, he turned his camera on, so I assumed he was going to start.
he's high.
I wanted to get the right lighting and it didn't work anyway. My apologies. Last week I was a little long, I think, so I'm going to try to go short. We're in the midst of VCAP testing, which my colleagues are as well. It's going really well at Newbrook because my staff is really working together and really trying to help the kids out, getting our accommodations and our small groups together. Camp Keewaydin's coming up, so there's a lot of excitement around that. We're sending 14 people to Keewaydin, and I'm going as well for the first half of the week. That's per my past practice. I'm looking forward to that. Our interim school nurse, Carol Bingham, is leaving, and we had a send-off for her at our last all-school sing. She's done an excellent job. We owe her some thanks. I can't wait to get Katie back. Our PTO planned with me an open house, and actually this pertains to our last discussion. We had, 5 families come to Newbrook and tour the school and socialize and hear out my spiel on our programming. 2 of them are pretty committed to coming to Newbrook next year, and 3 of them have I think in their families a traditional idea that they'd be doing some private schooling. And I'm not sure where we all landed, but I will say that if they do choose private schooling, they're going to know they have an excellent public school option. And I'm really very thankful to my PTO for inspiring the experience, because I think that it was it was great. It was great. Our science fair is coming together, and what's really exciting about it is because Module 2 in our new EL education curriculum is science-based throughout, we're getting some really nice whole school planning going on for the science fair, which last year was our largest curricular event outside of the school day. So I'm really looking forward to that. I do want to say that, unfortunately, I think you probably read in my report, our trout experience this year was cut a little short. Mr. Gregan came to me one day and said the refrigeration unit in the tank is broken and there's no way to get it replaced in time, and I need to take these fish down to Grassy Brook right now. And so the children were kind of robbed of that experience, which it really bugs me out, because that's always a great experience for the students. We all go down together on a school bus and everybody gets a chance to release at least a few fish. So that's kind of a bummer. But I'm glad Gregan caught it before anything terrible happened. And I'm thankful to him for that. And those are kind of the highlights of my report. We sent a group of people to Lake Maury today for the PBIS conference that's paid for with BEST funds through the state. And they came back with a long list of action items. We are going to start working on those tomorrow during our half day, which I'm very excited about. We're also going to be doing our online portion of our ALICE training tomorrow. Thank you to the board. Thanks to everyone.
Excellent. Well done. And much shorter than your last run. All right.
Great, and because of some of the things that Scotty shared, he's making mine a lot shorter as well, because I won't have to report on the VTCAP assessments, because students at Townsend are also in the midst of those assessments as well. And our fifth graders are also preparing for Camp Keewaydin, so I can cross those off the list. I will mention the fourth grade recently celebrated the end of their poetry module in the EL education, so you'll keep hearing us talk about EL education, the major investment that we made in curriculum this year, because it really is it's a large part of what our students are involved in. But it also is really remarkable to see the work, the investment that our students are putting into the learning and the payoff that it's producing for them at the end of the units. And so at the end of the poetry unit for fourth grade, they invited their third grade peers and their fifth grade peers and a bunch of staff members in to be there for their celebration, where they presented the poems that they wrote, and throughout the course of the unit, they read poetry by famous poets, and read about what inspired those poets to write those poems. So they not only learned about the craft of writing poetry, but they also learned about the specific things that inspired those specific poets to write those individual pieces. And then they tried their own hand at writing poetry, and then they wrote about what inspired them to write those poems as well. And so at the celebration, they shared their poetry, and they shared what inspired them to write that poetry. And they also shared their original artwork that they created in art class that went along with the poem that they wrote. And so it was really wonderful to see the very personal work that the students created. And so it was not surface level work. It was really heartfelt, personal work, and really exemplified the kind of high quality, beautiful work that EL encourages kids to do. And so it was this great moment in time that I wish that more people could have been able to experience. And we're going to look for a way to sort of memorialize their work, because either by creating a book or creating a presentation, because it was really a wonderful celebration. So I felt like it was worth sharing with you. And I think that you should be really proud of those fourth graders and of the work that our teachers and our curriculum coordinator and everyone is doing with EL education. In terms of staffing, we welcomed a new para in our special education department, Sarah Stillwagon, who has been working with us as a substitute. She's a parent in the district. She's been working with us as a substitute, and she's also a part of our laughter program. And so she's now working with us through our special education department as a para at Townsend. As we've mentioned to you previously, we will have a vacancy for an elementary teacher for next year. I've previously talked about it as a vacancy in the first grade. However, I am able to tell you tonight that Honor Solari, who has been our fourth grade teacher, has requested to transfer into first grade for next year. So she will be taking that first grade position next year. And we are now searching for a fourth grade teacher for next year. So the vacancy will be in fourth grade for next year. And that search process is underway. We have a search committee, and interviews are about to begin. And I think those are the highlights to share from the report, so I'll pass it over to Dana.
Before we do, I just want to say I was in Townsend this morning. I was delighted to see that Randy was bringing a plate covered in tinfoil to his kindergarten room, and on that plate were a bunch of letter E's that were brown. And he told the kids he had a plate of brownies for them. and then uncover the tinfoil. What's that? Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, like, when I was a high school principal, I don't know if that would have flown or not, but yeah, I thought it was pretty cute.
It's April 1st today, so just in case you didn't get that.
It wasn't just for fun, yeah. So anyways, that was my Townsend experience this morning.
Is that a transition to our April Fool's joke?
Yeah, tell us about you had nothing happening today,
No,
right?
nothing. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about that. Yep, big cap testing is underway.
I wasn't in the sea level bathroom.
Yeah, I know. You showed up at the end, I get it. Just want to be clear, I put a note in here about the exploration of 5 schedule block. The scheduling committee's done a great job, and we even brought it to the staff today. We're going to work on processing staff feedback tomorrow. And the one thing I was thinking about on my drive home today was that Bob, at one point, a couple meetings ago, was like, oh, I tried, and I tried, and I tried. Good luck to Dana. And I may be coming back to you to tell you, like, nope, he tried, and we've got 14 minds around it. And to be honest, like, they've done good work, but like, we keep uncovering binds and constraints that have drawbacks that we're not willing to. Anyway.
What Dana has uncovered is the incontrovertible truth that there is no perfect schedule in a high school.
No. We knew that going in, and we just were like, but like, we've gone to the nth degree. I'm not saying we're done. We're going to process it tomorrow, but I do want to recognize the scheduling committee, because they've just done an excellent job, and they've been positive and haven't gotten stuck in sometimes the spin that like this isn't working or whatever. All right. Anyway, I also want to do a shout out for our personalized learning portfolio committee. They came to us with an idea about, well, it was a couple weeks ago. They want to, I don't know, people don't really even know about this, but what they want to do is they do want to engage the staff and the students with a small personalized learning portfolio celebration at the end of the year, and we're looking to coordinate it with a new parent night in June for our incoming 6th grade parents, and also possibly any new high school students or 7th, 8th, whatever, so that not only are parents coming in at the end of June to see and learn about the school for the summer, but also we have portfolios on display of what our students do here. So it's kind of like a combined event, but I think it'll be a great, it's a great idea. So we're going to lean into that. Under high quality staffing, the middle school team is actually using the EL program as a springboard to lean into, and my understanding is, I'm going to allow it to date, I'm going to own it, but the terminology is changing. We don't talk about interdisciplinary units or cross-curricular, but now I think it's trans-curricular, because the work that students doing is really between the classroom walls are kind of disappearing, in the work that they're doing travels from class to class around unified learning practices, projects, and summative. So that's actually, it's really exciting. And they brought it up as something that they wanted to do, and that middle school team deserves credit for really jumping in and thinking about the students in a way to improve the school. We'll just kind of, the discipline's been okay, but let's just skip that for now, because spring's coming, but it's fine. We are talking about vape detectors for next year. We're looking at funding. We're trying to figure out what that means for our bathrooms, whether it's doors or locks, but one of the things that we have to really process, and I want to make sure that we do this with staff, and we haven't completely done that yet. We may be looking at single-user bathrooms, because if we install vape detectors, and this is the case now, if there's multiple people in there, you don't really know who or what. If it's single user, the vape detector goes off and you're the one that's in there, There's not a whole lot of discussion. So we've got to explore the costs, we've got to explore the implications, what does it do with class time and student bathroom usage and all that. So that'll be a good can of worms, but we're looking into it. We're talking about early college.
So one of the things that Dana has, as he's gone further down the journey of high school land, is this concept we have called early college. And early college, if you don't know, is a program that was created as part of the Flexible Pathways a number of years ago, which allows seniors to, in essence, forego their senior year of college. They unenroll, keep that in mind, and they enroll in typically CCV. BTC used to have one as well. And they go to school for free on the state's dime. But it isn't really the state's dime, it's our dime, because we lose them as an ADM. So, and in the past years, there's 1, 2, maybe 3 kids that have done it annually. But this year, Dana was seeing an uptick in the number of kids who were interested. My sources to the south indicate that trend is also happening in other high schools too. At any rate, so it's not just a Leland and Gray thing. But in thinking about that, trying to figure like, well, if we're going to lose, 5 or 6 kids or more to early college, we lose those ADM counts. They get free college for the year. They re-enroll the day before graduation, which is per law, and they graduate with their class. In the meantime, they are still eligible to participate in all the athletics and programming that we have. And we get no money to support them in that because all the money is going to the college. So in thinking about a creative way to deal with that is sort of a 2-pronged approach that Dana and his team have come up with. And the first prong is to try to delay the vouchers, the 2 vouchers that kids get, as late as we can, so that they are less likely to have to pay for those years by the time they get to senior year. And the second one is a sort of a hybrid plan that between Dana and Terry, Sarah, and Heidi and I have kind of come up with, which is to consider offering students the idea that we would pay for their CCV coursework up to a cap, a number of credits for a year. We would pay, and they would not unenroll, and they would stay our student. And the cost of doing so is less expensive for us to pay up to, the number was 12 credits?
Yeah, I think so.
Then it would be for them to leave and become a student somewhere else. So this is a conceptually new thing. And so what they're toying around with the idea of offering it to students who have expressed interest in early college to see if this is something that would interest them. This would give them the ability to do a hybrid. They can still do a class or 2 here, co-op, what have you. They'd still be our student.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out to Sarah and Terry because they really helped to bring the clarity to this and come up with ideas around it. Part of it too is like students might use their voucher in their junior year for a dual enrollment class that's here at Leland and Gray, where they pointed out like really we should just pay that enrollment fee, which is minimal compared to the value of the voucher if they're going to CCB. It's like a couple $100 compared to, over 1,000. So it's like, they have some good points. Because part of my understanding is part of what's happening is when we have students that are getting their senior year, they've used their vouchers, they want to continue taking coursework, and either their family has to pay for a course or 2 and they stay here, or they do the early college and they go full in. So it's like, they kind of get into this spot where financially they almost have to.
Makes more sense for the family to do the early college.
Yeah.
If we can leverage that and make it, again, it's a choice. They obviously can still do it, but it would make it so that it would be still advantageous for them to get free coursework at CCV, but maintain them as students, which would be advantageous for us and our student count. They get what they need, we get what we need, and they're pushing their vouchers off as well. So we're reducing the cost by those vouchers if they get pushed off to senior year. So the thought was we would try this year with those numbers of kids as a pilot, see how it played out numbers wise, have a cap so it wasn't just like free for all, and then see where we went and then report back on how it played out. from a fiscal perspective, and how it played out for the kids' experiences too, because some of these kids are kids that might want to participate in student leadership opportunities, which are challenge. This is one thing to play on a sports team. You come back and you practice. And kids have been doing that with the tech center for years. But to like be a class officer or an NHS officer or things like that, when you're not in the building at all, it is a little bit tougher. So to have this opportunity where they can create this hybrid schedule, maybe access a class or a co-op with us, still be around, and then get some of these other courses. So just a creative way of trying to think about how to preserve the numbers while still giving families close to, or maybe even the same as, the experience they would be getting before. So, curious if people had thoughts about that. It was really good trying as a pilot, see how it played out. We don't want to overextend ourselves, have it cost more, obviously, so we have to be thoughtful about the numbers. But.
So what would be like, from a family's perspective, the worst case scenario? Like their kid may not get quite as many
Well, it
hours
depends.
or
I mean,
classes.
for the worst case scenario for the family.
I mean, if we have a cap.
Yeah, so if you
wouldn't-
capped it at 12 credits.
Yeah.
So you're taking either 4 3-credit classes or 3 4-credit classes, which the early college students probably taking 3 to 4, maybe 5. So you might be one short depending on which courses you're taking.
Yeah.
But some of them might only do 3 or 4, so you might actually be the same exact number. It really depends.
So potentially worst case scenario from a family's perspective would be if they had a student who was like super gung-ho, wanted to take their maximum course load, they would not be able to do that under this system, but they could still choose not to participate in this system if they wanted to.
Correct.
Now, could they, I'm trying to think through this at the same time, so bear with me. Could they start off by saying, I'm pretty sure I only want to do X number of credits and it works out for me to stay within the school, and so I want to do that, but then realize after they've made that decision, actually I would like to go past this. Is there any reason why they couldn't, if we have already paid out part of it? Would it impact the ability for them to do more afterwards?
If they had used up their vouchers, then they would be on their own for those. If they have not used up their vouchers, then they could use their vouchers.
In part of what we want to do is we want to talk to students and families so they don't use their vouchers if they're taking dual enrollments here. Like, don't use it yet. Hang on to it. We're just going to pay it.
Which we do anyways.
And so it's going to help them to keep it until they're ready to do CCB or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's really a drawback for families, honestly.
Families, in theory, I mean, this year might be the family that wants to do one more or whatever. That could be the drawback. But they could choose to still do early college, so it wouldn't matter. But that would be the only drawback I could think of. But if after a year, if this works, after a year or two, they've deferred their vouchers, then there really wouldn't be a difference, and we'd be able to keep them.
Yeah.
So like, that's, again, we don't know what that would look like. I'm nervous about more people taking advantage of it and then having it cost more. But I mean, the classes are small, so it's not, the risk factor is narrower than it would be in a much bigger place. You know?
Good.
Is this a problem because students are running out of things to take here, and so that is why they are going elsewhere? Or maybe let's rephrase that as running out of things they want to take.
Yeah, I think that could be part of it. I think the other part of it could be is there are students who are maybe socially not as engaged and are just ready for that sort of the college experience and want the freedom of like having classes at night or classes sleeping in until noon and having a class in the afternoon. Like, some people are just ready for that by the time they're seniors, and so they just take it for that purpose.
And I think that the thing that I'm understanding is we've had students that have done very well here and they want to get some college experience, but the vouchers are gone. So it's like, oh, I don't have $2,000 to do 2 courses there. So,
it pushes them into having to do the early
Yeah,
college, which takes them away from us.
Yeah.
So like this is just a way to try to blend it a little bit.
Yeah, because I mean, even today I met with a junior who was like, well, I want to take a class here next year after, and it's like, how can I get, so like, doesn't mean it's everybody, but I feel like students want to have their choice here and do that, but the way we're working right now, kind of those kids get kind of unintentionally encouraged to leave because it's financially more, they're not on the hook for it, basically.
Discussion. Peter.
I think that this sounds like a really good idea, and to quickly talk to Lindsay's last question there, as someone in the generation that is in high school, there's a lot of pressure to get things done sooner and sooner, and so there's a lot of pressure for my generation to get college done as soon as possible, and so I think that this is a really great opportunity to do an easier slide, as you were talking about. And I'm excited to hear, eager to hear the results of it.
Emily's next. Emily.
Thanks. This has been very intriguing conversation, and one of the main reasons that, Bob, you alluded to this earlier, this isn't just Leland Gray. This is happening more. We're seeing more of it across the state and hearing more about it, and it's come up in the education committee and in the legislature. So I appreciate me hearing all of this, and stay tuned, because now that the Ed Transformation Bill has left our committee, we today made a list of things that we're going to talk about in our committee, and one of them was about the early college program, because it does seem to be really impacting, especially small rural high schools. And we don't want to create more challenges for schools that are having challenges already.
Emily, if you need anyone to testify at all, I would volunteer Terry Davison-Berger for that job. I think she's got a pretty good handle on all the methodologies that go into it, and she's in the trenches with the kids, hearing what their thinking is, and I think she'd be a great person to consider for that.
That's great. Thank you for telling me that.
Al.
She might not thank me, but
Well,
I really like the balance of what you're suggesting. I mean, when they're juniors and seniors and they're leaving, if they were leaving the entire time, that's a student leadership vacuum, right? Now you have freshmen and sophomore running the show when they're not prepared. I think this is a better transition for everybody.
Twin Valley has experienced that. I've heard that they've had the number of seniors in the building at times been in the single digits, because their classes are smaller now anyways, but even so many kids have either school choice somewhere else or done early college just to kind of get out that there's like 5 seniors in the building. Like, that's not good for culture. It's not good for the remaining seniors who are left. Like, it's all around not great.
Bob, that's exactly what the challenge is that we're hearing. The small rural schools are sometimes unable to even have enough students for the classes they have, because they've got a number of students leaving for early college. So like I said, stay tuned, because we don't, our job is to make sure that we educate our K, well, actually K isn't even required, but we do K-12, and this is becoming, beyond 12. And it's not so much about kids and parents and needs and costs, but it is also literally about changing the dynamics of what we're paying for. And if we're gonna pay for a system that is K-14 as opposed to K-12, well, that's fine. But that's not what we are paying for right now. We're supposed to be paying for K-12. So I recognize all the reasons why we're doing it, but I see it is clearly becoming a bigger problem in the smaller schools, especially. So.
I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with approving. So this would be a new budget expense line. So we just had our budget approved a week ago. And we'd be talking about authorizing payment of direct credits for students that was not in the budget. Is that word? That's what I heard you say, but maybe I'm.
So we have been paying. So there's a gap between the kids who have, like, if we have students who are doing in-house enrollment and they don't have a voucher, there's still this fee that we are charged by the university to basically transcript schools. We've been paying that for years here. Those families. So it isn't like we don't already have budget money going in that direction anyways. this would probably add some. But
So like $300.
well, it depends on how many credits they take, right? It's going to be based on the credit hours. The flip side is though that if we don't do something, the revenue side is going to go down because those ADM are going to leave, and over a 2-year average, you're going to have less revenue. So it's like, yes, it's not in the expenditure budget to the level that we're talking about. I don't think. I mean, it might be $10,000 more total than what we're talking about than what's currently budgeted. But
I think we thought it was around 12,
Yeah,
and that was
12.
high.
But you stand, and that's if X number of kids, whatever. But you stand to lose, if 6 kids leave, it's a 2-year average. That's 3 ADM per each of those 2 years. I mean, that's significantly more money than the 12,000 per year. So it was like, yeah.
I mean, what makes me uncomfortable is that we don't have that math laid out for us. Like, what are the? We're talking about it in kind of general terms, but we haven't seen this is how much new spending that's not currently in our budget that we are, because that's got to come from somewhere, right? There's new spending.
Yep.
And hopefully the new spending holds on to the students, but we don't know that that's the case, because if you open up this new spending that you're going to offer to pay for college tuition for seniors, kids that weren't planning on leaving may I'll take a night class, and you're gonna have to offer to them too, right? So it's gonna be all juniors or all juniors and seniors
only,
or whoever.
Yeah, we would narrow it.
Right. So it could be that if you're we're paying for up to 12 credits for college or for high school seniors, every high school senior at Leland and Gray could go, I'll take my 12 free credits, and you're gonna have to pay for all of them, right? Not just some.
Well, but remember, part of it is they're going to use their voucher for that. We want them to have their voucher when they're seniors to do for that. And my understanding was, if it's a dual enrollment class that's internal at Leland Gray, it's much more affordable for us to cover that cost than to pay a cost like CCB. That was not really our purpose. Our purpose was to cover the cost of internal for dual enrollments, to encourage the students to take the dual enrollment classes here, save your voucher, and then when you're trying to go externally to CCB or another Vermont college, then you use your voucher. I think they're allowed 2 each though, right? It's
one for each junior and senior year.
Yeah, so
they could defer them to the senior year.
Yeah, so then they would have 2 and take 2 classes here still.
To answer your question, we don't know, but we would maybe cap it at say 12,000. Say that when that fund runs out, it's first come first serve.
Yeah.
We're capping the number of credits. It's for seniors only, and we're capping the total expenditure by 12. And then we play it out and see what happens, and then we can report back. We'll know well before budget season next year how many people are interested in doing this, because they have to be signing up now for next year. We didn't know this was going to be a problem when we built the budget, however, because they signed up for early college in the spring, and the budget's already long been adopted. So that's the challenge. But yeah, it's really more of staving off a drop in revenue, and it's going to cost expenditure money to do it, but it's going to make fiscal sense if it works out the way we hope it will.
Yeah, it was $12,000. I think it was $12,200 when we did the math based on the requests that we had. It was all right, so if that's the ballpark of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So.
And how many students is that?
I think it's 5 to 6. I don't think it was 7 yet, but we're concerned.
How many students are in the senior class?
I don't know, it's 25. Well, it's on the
35.
Yeah, it's on the report actually. Well, 33, so it's higher than what I thought.
Looks like Heidi wants to chime in. Go ahead, Heidi.
Thanks, Drew. Sorry, my video for some reason is not working on my laptop. I just wanted to say when I was discussing this with Bob, I think we determined that the cost of 2 semesters of 12 credits each semester was around $6,700 per student. And when you look at what the threshold was for determining your tax implications, they consider the student to be about $16,000 that you're getting in revenue. So for 5 kids to do full-time 12 credits each semester, you're looking at around $33,000, but you're looking at bringing in $80,000 from those kids in your ADM. So I just wanted to give you that financial perspective it sounds like they're potentially looking at kids doing less than 12 a semester, but I also think that $6,700 per kid a year for keeping their ADM is fairly reasonable. I think it hurts us more losing that ADM, but that's just the information I wanted to share.
Does this include all colleges or just CCV? Is it limited to just the one institution?
It's the Vermont state system, yeah.
So does it cover
Hazelton.
fees associated with those colleges too? Because I know for VSU, their fees are, almost $6,700. Like we send paramedic students there, we're talking about, thousands of dollars in fees. So who covers all the fees associated with it?
I haven't heard that.
I mean, in the early college one, I don't think, we don't ever hear about that.
But these wouldn't be early college students. These would be tuition paid by
credit hour.
By credit hour, so they would have to go through a traditional pathway. And
Yeah.
that's why I would like to see a budget. Like I really think there's a lot of details missing. This is my opinion. That
Well, some of this, we just don't know how many kids would do it, how many credits each kid would take, and if they had, so like I said, if some of them feel like they're being forced out for certain financial reasons for their family's need, if we're offering the ability to do like a hybrid, maybe they're only taking one course a semester or two courses a semester, and it's not really 12, it's more like 6. And so like that cost that how you just talked about is cut in half. We just don't know until we try it, and we can have a prediction, but the concern is that the ADM count decline has implications far more reaching than just the expenditure side, because now you're losing their weighting. So if it's a student in poverty, you've just lost that as well. If it's a student on a plan, you've lost that. If it's a student, they're all students from rural areas because they're our students, you lose that as well. So like those weighting factors, she mentioned the base number, but there's also weightings that go along with that too. So, I mean, and you lose them for 2 years. Well, I guess the seniors will be gone a year anyways, but so you're losing half of them, I guess.
And there's 2 layers to this too, because you're asking about the now, like we're also talking about like being proactive to prevent this from happening. So that there are 2 layers to the what we're trying to do, but
as we learned from our experience with Jamaica students getting approved to go to Wardsboro, once the door is open, more and more students are likely to.
Well, there's a risk, there's no doubt about it.
Would there be extra fees though? That's an interesting point.
I don't have any idea.
yeah,
I feel like
makes sense to me. I haven't
that's
heard
worth
that.
knowing.
And I think this though, like, so if you internally build momentum within Leland and Gray for our dual enrollment classes, like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing for us, and I think that's a cost worth front loading. And then you build your culture within the school, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to be here for these, but maybe these 2 I'm going out, and like we'll have the vouchers to handle that. So it'll take a year or 2 to get it going. This first year is the one where like, oh, we haven't done this before, but I think it makes sense. Like 1 or 2 kids, you're gonna have the ADM to make it up.
So
I know we're guessing at how many students this would impact. I think as long as the delta between the ADM that we would hold and the what Heidi described as what would go out, which is almost $10,000 per student. Again, we don't know the number of students, but as long as we're on the plus side of the revenue, I feel much more comfortable with that. Agreed. Could there be fees? That would be a nice to know, but hopefully there's not $10,000 in fees that eats the rest of that revenue up. But I'd say, and the other benefit of maintaining leadership in students, I don't see a downside to it, depending on whether there are fees, even if we did have a number of more than we thought, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. The only downside is, Drew points out, is you're potentially deficit spending. That's in that one area. That's the
On
downside.
expenditures and net offset. Yeah.
other discussion.
I think it's a really good out of the box thinking solution to a problem.
And to be fair,
especially if you set it up so that the the vouchers pick up some of the costs down the line.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, right now there could be kids who are looking at their senior year who've used their 2 vouchers, or only have 1 left and really want 2 classes or something like that. But if you work to transition this to, you know, here's college and dual enrollment, and now senior year, you've got 2 vouchers to take 2 classes, you probably stand a pretty fair chance of keeping some of them.
And I just want to be clear, like, Carrie and Sarah really brought this forward and worked on it. So, like, I want to give them credit for this. Definitely something they've been working on. It's a great idea.
Credit's due, but it's I think it's a different, you know, this is a sticky problem, and
Yes.
this is a really good solution to it that, you know, probably not everybody's going to come up with.
Yeah.
I imagine we'll be leading and somebody will be picking this up from us.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense.
I also, I think it's a great idea. I would just, obviously I would trust that you would come back to us if all of a sudden you're like, hey, turns out there was something that came up and suddenly we're only gonna be able to get 2 kids in here because of some extra fee or something changed, and we, like, I know that there's a lot of unknowns here. I hope that, I just don't wanna tie our hands into something that suddenly unknowns become untenable and now we're stuck because we already said we were doing a thing, and but I do think it's a great idea.
We could also adjust the 12 to a lower number and just gamble a little bit, or gamble less, I should say, and have that number be lower, and just say to the kids, like, yeah, instead of 4 classes, we're going to allow you to do 2 per semester or 3 per semester, and that's the cap instead of 12. I mean, that could lower the risk, if you will, of what could be a possible expenditure, while still giving them the opportunity to have that hybrid situation.
And to be clear, they were excited that this was coming to the board, and they were waiting for go. And when they have that permission, they already have a couple kids and families that they want to talk to about.
Yeah, no kids have been talked to about.
No, so we like to get that clarity, but they already have ideas of who wants what and like who's kind of getting, because it's what they have to do. So no, there's good energy around this, and I don't think it's going to take long for us to have a pretty clear picture on it. So.
Further discussion? Do we need a motion? I don't know that it's required.
I mean, if you're wading into it knowing that there's a potential for deficit spending, maybe you want to have a motion on record just to say that that you're aware, just for transparency's sake. If you want to include in that having us modify what that proposal was with lower number or something, I think that's fine too. You know, it could be that the kids, I'll be like, yeah, no thanks, I just want to do it. It could be that one kid's like, oh, I only really need 1 class. I just was going to do it because I couldn't afford the 1 class. So it's cheap. Like, we don't know. But because the particular budget line, as you're referencing, would be overspent, maybe it's a good idea to do that. I mean, we've run surplus in other areas in recent years, including this year's projected. So, I mean, it's not like we're going to be deficit spending overall bottom line, most likely, but who knows what else will come up in the year when we can't anticipate now. So,
I was just going to bring up, you get a figure in a couple of years would weed out all the, if it's good or bad, because grade 10 is 43 students. It would be 43 seniors. It might get awful expensive.
yeah. Like I said, Brattleboro was seeing, I think, a 10% of their senior class was looking. So for us to be like, 4 or 5 kids is over 10% for us.
It's like 5 to 7
Yeah.
for next year. So it's an investment in the school community, and it's like, I think you can build a culture where you're gonna retain the majority of the cohort and support them in exploring early college. But I think you're gonna have the majority of the base that will stay here and do some, but stay here too, because your internal dual enrollment classes should see increased numbers too.
How would that motion be framed?
I'm happy to make a motion, but I don't know even what to say.
Go go ahead with Operation Early College.
Yeah, I think there's discussion on record to illustrate you know what you're walking into, just to
Yeah.
approve a pilot for 1 year to see how this alternative crediting concept would look, and report back, something like that.
With close review by our budget committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't put that in motion.
Like I said, we'll know in a month's time how many kids are opting. We don't know exactly how many classes they'll take necessarily yet, but we'll know what the landscape a little bit more looks like, but we don't want to offer it until we know that you guys are okay with it either, so.
What is the push for them? I mean, do they, a lot of kids, does Terry and them say, here's this option,
Yeah, well, I
and we
think,
sell it to them?
I think the push is for the kids who are feeling like they're being pushed out, or who still are like, well, I was gonna do early college because it's free college for my family, but I never got to take Whitman's blah 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 class. I'd like to do it. Well, okay, well you don't have, because if you do early college, you can't enroll in Whitman's class. Because
Yeah.
you're not an enrolled student with us. So it's that sort of conversation, that back and forth with the family. It's like, yeah, well actually, that actually might work for me if you guys are gonna cut. It doesn't cost the family any different.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a matter of what can I still access and what can I be engaged with.
Like one of the things we talked about, the jazz band is growing. I mean, you know, we just had a bunch of students place at States, and it's like, well, if you do early college, there go, 3 of those students. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
rebuilding. It's like, so, but if music's important to them, maybe they're gonna be here with that and do a couple of courses out and not just completely leave. So it impacts on all different levels. I don't believe for a moment that we're gonna have all those students stay here, but I think some will, you know.
So was that a motion?
That was definitely a motion, yeah.
All right.
Second.
Can we restate the motion to
Yeah.
make it easier for the minutes? The
I-
motion. It started kind of like a motion-ish thing.
Yeah. That we would approve the
Administration's pilot proposal for
1 year.
tuition payments in lieu of early college.
Yeah. All right.
That sounds right.
There's a motion.
Second.
Is there a second on that
Much more
motion?
motioning sounding.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second.
Is it tuition payments or is it credit payments for credits? I don't,
I mean, that's their tuition is by credit hour, so it's.
I know, I'm just wondering about. I totally leave it up to you.
All right. So you have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, want everybody to vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed or abstaining? The ayes have it, the motion carries. All right. So that goes on record as the longest principal's report.
Sorry. This guy's got his work cut out for him.
Don't give him any ideas.
Hey, just because you guys are frustrated, don't bring me into this.
All right, so continuous improvement plans.
So as much as I'd love to say, hey, it's 9:15, we should defer these, there is a timeline for the state. We have to get these back to them, approved by boards. So Jamaica does not have to do one, but the other 3 schools do. I believe they're all in your packets. These, I'll just speak for the principals, and they can jump in if they want. These have been vetted and created in conjunction with their staff, with their leadership teams, and with their parent advisory groups as needed or as whatever. They are in alignment under the umbrella of the WCSU CIP. And we're required to have those adopted and uploaded to the state by the end of this month, and that's why they're here in front of you now. That's all 3 of them. If you want to hear specifics, you could ask each one to report out, or you could just ask questions based on what you see in your packets.
Line by line detail. All right, what would the wishes of the board?
And I will add, like, I know you're joking about line by line, but these are important documents that drive the work that happens in the schools. And they're also compliance documents for the AAP based on funding that we get through grants. So it's a little bit of both. We do take them seriously. They do drive some of the work that we do. The strategies that are listed in there are things that the schools are doing and working on. But certainly the structure of them and the format of them and the craziness of it is based on the AOE compliance.
Question/comment. So I know that these are compliance documents, but I do think it's super important that we are being very mindful about things that we know we need to improve on and wish to improve on. And I know that we've talked a lot recently about how much better as a district we have gotten about data collection and distribution. And I would actually love, if it's possible, to basically come back to these plans on a somewhat regular basis with, here's the new data we have, here is how we're moving in all of these categories. Because I think that something like we as a board don't really talk about like individual accountability for things like that, like the sort of the nitty-gritty stuff. But like that's what it's about, right? Like, are we getting better? That's literally what we're here for. And I don't know whether it makes sense. This is just something that I recently was actually talking to Scotty about when we were talking about this at a school level. I don't know whether it makes sense to include some of that information in principal reports as part of the like regular reporting out that we get. But I would really like to see, we list like we are going to measure based on local assessments and performance tasks. I'd love to know some of that information, like on a more regular basis. I think we are doing a lot of the stuff, and I don't think that we talk about it enough. Anyway.
Well, and I will say this too, that these are not developed in vacuums. So each of the principals had to do what's called a full data inventory.
Yeah.
So if you were part of that team, you probably saw some of that, which means that we're collecting all these data points to point in a direction that shows where those improvements are needed. So it isn't based on just like, holding your finger up in the wind. There is data that drives where these action steps are taken from. So by extension, you would be able to have data to show what progress you're making towards those goals. So if the board wants to have that be part of a principal's report, we can have a section that we can modify the report structure so that there are, updates to CIP progress as part of that, and they can speak to what they're doing. Because I think there's going to be data points that are going to be very easy for them to show you, particularly around benchmark timing, to show like, hey, by the way, this improved, or we get some panorama survey data that shows that we did this, or we get our VIII results that show there was a fire alarm in the middle of whatever. But I mean, we have data points, multiple data points that we be able to show.
And I think just sort of relating it to these particular items makes it a little more digestible than just saying like, here's the incident report for the month, because that's, without comparing it to something else specifically, it's like good information, but only because I happen to know what the previous times were, because I've been paying attention. But not everybody is always
Paying attention.
These are actually a little different. I went through the past years, and this was the first year in several years that it wasn't just the formatting, because the formatting's changed. But some of the wording of the goals and the way we're going to get there have changed for the first time that I'm going back through in probably like 3 or 4 years. So I love that. But I would also like an update, like we're setting goals. Are we meeting those goals? Are we approaching those goals? Like how, where are we at? When you set a goal, you want to reach it. Like that's why it's a goal. And I just feel that we keep, approving the CIPs, but I don't remember hearing any feedback as to how we're progressing towards those goals, and I would like to hear that.
Makes sense.
Also, thank you for doing the work.
It's a ton of work.
Everybody.
Their
Yes.
teams, yeah.
Good conversation, discussion or questions?
So for the purposes of the minutes, which I will have to also upload, or the principals will, with their approved plans, we do need a formal motion to adopt or to approve the SIP plans for, you can do one motion, but each of the 3 schools should be named in the motion so that it's in the minutes so that it will be seen by the AOE.
I would move that we approve CIP plans for Leland and Gray, Newbrook Elementary, and Townsend Elementary.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. Superintendent's report.
So I stand between you and adjournment, so I'll be brief. The cabinet report for April will come out probably tomorrow. It was supposed to come out this morning, but I had a couple last minute tweaks and I was not in yesterday or Friday. So I'm gonna tweak those, you'll be getting that tomorrow. The bulk of the report for me these days is really watching Emily and seeing what she's doing up there in Montpelier and her cohort. And really following along with trying to keep up with the bills, trying to understand what the implications are for each of the districts that I represent. So I do that through meeting with local legislators like Emily, and also through VSA updates, also the VSBA updates that you guys get, the legislative updates through there. Heidi and I also have regular conversations with she gets from VSBA. So there's a lot going on at the state level, as you guys know, and you can read about on a regular basis. And there's a couple things happening at the federal level as well that could impact us. And the 2 things that I just want to mention, and nothing is definitive, but these are things just to kind of keep an eye on. One of them is Medicaid, which is an SU, and Heidi, if you're still on, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but we get somewhere in the neighborhood of $170,000 in Medicaid, is that correct?
Yeah, just a little bit under that, yeah.
Nailed it. And so if that goes away based on federal decrees or what have you, that will change things, but that's a sort of an SU in and then out branch. So anyways, we'll deal with that when it happens, if it happens. And the other one is the child nutrition program. The federal side of that, which is a lot of controversy around, will that go away? And likewise, at the state level, they're also talking about, there's a push to get rid of the universal meals from the governor's proposal, and different committees are dealing with that differently, I guess. And so that, that could change things. It could change the dynamic of what do we actually want to do. If there's no money, how do we do that? So on and so forth. So there could be some additional lost revenue in our future as well. So just keep an eye on that, and I'll keep you guys up to date as soon as I know more on that one. But yeah, that's what's being talked about.
Questions? Oh, go ahead, Emily.
Just quickly, tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning, we are going to be hearing from the AOE on the impacts of whatever's going on in the federal government. So if anybody wants to watch it, it's on Zoom in the House Education Committee. We're getting an update from the challenges that we're constantly facing that you just described well, Bob.
10:30 or 10 a.m.?
10:30 in the morning on the House Education YouTube channel.
So, yeah. And that's what I got.
Is policy a separate conversation, or
Well,
is it?
yeah, so now that I have a policy committee, I will badger them separately. But in short, there are a couple of policies we need to look at to be adopted in time for July 1 based on some legal changes. So I will send that to those guys and maybe set up a committee meeting to meet and talk about those things with the hope of having them to you guys and to warn them for May and adopt them in June. So they'll be in effect by the July 1 date per statute. So if you signed up for that, you thought you had no work coming, suckers, I'll be in touch.
Do we need an executive session this evening?
We do not, because the other district's update did not come.
Okay. Well, that brings us down to adjournment.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And Al, you know, 25.
Great.
Yeah, 25 minutes.